Welcome to the Lords of the Fallen Instant Review. What's up, friends? This is Manni, and not From Software has opened the gates to Dark Souls 4. No, it was Hexworks. With all the typical starting classes like knights, partisans, or clerics, but also some exotic Vikings like Rollo here, for example, or Altair is also here. And you should know that there are some secret unlockable starting classes like the Radiant Purifier, Lord, Putrid Child, or Dark Crusader. Some of them are DLC classes, others have to be unlocked through story achievements in the game. I'll be making a separate video to showcase that for you later. So what is Lords of the Fallen? It's an extensive and amazing Souls-like that manages to feel a lot like what you would expect from Dark Souls 4. That also, however, while looking better than ever, adds a ton of new interesting elements and features to the franchise. It makes you want to see any area, unlock all the secrets, not miss out on any items, and of course all that in both dimensions. Because there's a world of the living and a world of the dead, and you're going to interact with both of them, often simultaneously. So much for the intro, let's get into it. Oops, if we can make it past the technical difficulties at launch, crashes, performance issues, and that, from what I heard, are even worse on consoles. Because the game isn't the easiest to run. It uses the Unreal Engine, which is amazing, however, it seems to have a lot of problems right now, reaching from just stuttering and memory leaks over to simply crashing completely, and while there have already been 4 patches out, it has not at all been fixed so far, but I'm not too worried about it. I think they're gonna get it under control pretty quickly. And for those whose hardware allows them to play the game, they can enjoy that notoriously cryptic story that it seems we always need in these types of games, that is very well similar to what we know from the Souls series, and that is really well done with its dark setting that makes you want to know more about why things are the way they are. So while diving into the game, we have the same typical tutorial boss in the beginning that you're supposed to lose against, kind of, right? Let's be realistic, most of us, like 99.999% of the players, will not be able to fight this boss. At least not win the fight. And it also has the same similar punishing empty flask animation that we know from Dark Souls as well, but also, like I said, many additional new elements that the Souls series doesn't have, while also adding these additional enriching features that fit perfectly into the lore and mechanics of the game. Here, for example, you can see in the Land of the Living there's an obstacle that I can't jump across. It's simply too far away. But I can see with the lantern into the world of the dead, and I can see I can interact with it. Not from here though, I have to seamlessly transfer into the world of the dead, from where I can then grab onto that corpse, pull it towards me, and with that cross the gap. And of course, this wouldn't be a Souls-like if we didn't have confusing encounters with unknown characters that we don't know at that time. But what really stands out for me here in this game is the world of the dead. That completely changes the appearance of the game, and that you always interact with, even when you're in the Land of the Living. For example, you can use that lantern to soul flay the enemy, pull his soul out of his body, and hit that instead with additional damage, all of which combined with a tremendous weapon variety: 2 daggers, 2 great swords, shield and sword, spear, magic, long range throwing axes, bows. You can have it all in this game, and the combat allows you to make interesting combinations out of your moves between light and heavy and charged attacks. Just like in Souls games, you can use a weapon 1- or 2-handed, and basically it's exactly what you would want from this type of game. And for the skillers out there, we have the perfectly timed block and repose with finishing moves and critical hit staggers right from Dark Souls as well. The game leads you through dark ruins, mysterious temples, foggy swamp areas, snowy mountains, burning cities, and all that in this beautiful Unreal Engine that makes every area with a love of detail unforgettable and a real visual pleasure. You'll also enjoy riddles such as this wall that only exists in the Land of the Living, not so in the Land of the Dead, so you can either traverse into that world entirely and ignore the wall, or use the lantern to just face right through. And that will happen a bunch of times, leading you to interesting, cool additional loot that you may or may not have found if you hadn't been exploring. And aside from exploration and the fact that the Land of the Dead looks cool, it's also a high risk, high reward kind of thing, because there's a multiplier on how many souls, aka vigor, you get during your gameplay when killing enemies, and the more time you spend in the Land of the Dead, the more aware the evil becomes of you and sends more and more powerful enemies your way that you'll probably end up losing against at some point. And also be sure to know, when you die in the Land of the Dead, you're actually dead. Okay, not like when you're dying in the land of the living, where you get then sent into the land of the dead as a second try, you see? So high risk, high reward for sure. It's also so much fun to soul flail even powerful enemies, draw their soul out of a ledge, and then the body will follow the soul and whoop, there he goes. And sometimes you can do that with bosses too, or at least, you know, draw their soul out. It's a really interesting element of the game that I wouldn't want to miss going forward into additional or future Souls games, because it's so much fun to experiment around with that. By the way, if you do die in the game, it's a bit similar to Bloodborne, where either the soul will be where you left off and died, or it will be in the enemy that killed you, which, as you can imagine, is sometimes a little trouble when the enemy is a really powerful one. So there's a reason you died against him, because he's freaking powerful. Next time you come around, he's got your souls, and this time you have to beat him if you don't want to lose your souls. Now, without trying to spoil anything, I will say the story allows you to follow more than just the obvious path, allowing you to make some of your own choices for your own playthrough. But the game is not open world like Elden Ring, so it's more linear. You can sometimes decide to make a certain area before another, but generally you're following a more linear path in this game. But generally it is one world with no load times in between, and even loading and booting into the game goes, at least on my gaming laptop, immensely fast. According to the game developers, you'll need around 35 to 40 hours in average to beat the game the first time. Realistically, however, you'll be spending a lot more than that. 80 to 100 hours would not be surprising at all if you're just remotely like me, trying to find all the secret items, trying to figure out, how do I get this item that I see up there? There must be a way, and then you'll spend some time figuring it out. And like I said, there are these additional starting classes you're going to try to unlock during your first playthrough, which are sometimes really powerful even to start a new game with, and some of them will be DLC bosses, others may not. I'm gonna give you a guide for that coming up as well. Now, when it comes to multiplayer, there's a PvP system similar to Dark Souls with invasions, if you will, and then there is the co-op, which the game allows you to completely play it with your friend in co-op. However, there are flaws. The co-op partner will only receive 1/3 of the experience, and also no items coming from chests or something like this. Only items dropped by enemies he can get. You can drop him items, but if he wants to get that same ring from the chest, for example, he'll have to do that also on his end. Obviously, the game progress follows the host, which makes sense, but if you already make the decision to allow players to completely play the game together, then I think it would be better if you would also share all the experience and loot with them as well, and just make it a whole experience together. So while watching this Umbral Warrior from Deity Vangi, my advice to you is, if you can play this game and you do like this sort of game, you played the Souls games for example, then I would definitely advise you to go and get this, because it is an insanely cool experience, and I get the feeling that we're just seeing the beginning of it, because they have gone so far to make an incredibly awesome replica of a Souls franchise, and I think we're gonna see so much more of this awesomeness going forward. So get yourself familiar with it, because you're not gonna regret it. Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching, and catch you in the next videos. Manni signing off. Bye bye.